What's going on, tactical buddies? Will Schilling again with another gutter fighting secret. So what we're going to be doing today is something a little bit new and different. We're going to be breaking down a fight scene from The Sopranos. I tend to like The Sopranos quite a bit for fight scenes because it does a very good job at showing what an actual street fight looks like. Specifically, an actual street fight with guys like this. Street-hardened criminals who have maybe not had a whole lot of actual hand-to-hand combatives training, although definitely some, as you'll see in the video. But they have more so had actual hand-to-hand fighting experience, and that always is more powerful than simply training. You can go and hit the Muay Thai pads all you freaking want. It's not going to prepare you for a Muay Thai match or a Muay Thai fight in the actual ring. More so, it's not going to prepare you for an actual street fight when those rules go away and there's no more points. However, this episode or this specific scene from The Sopranos is going to do a very good job at showing in detail kind of what an actual street fight really looks like. So let's break it down, and I'll kind of throw my 2 cents into it as far as what's going down and what's going to be expected in a street fight, that type of thing. Before I get into it, let me just say, all of the footage that we're going to be analyzing here is strictly for educational purposes. I'm utilizing it to teach you guys about hand-to-hand combatives and street fighting, specifically actual science of street fighting. It's a scientific way that we can break this stuff down. So with that in mind, let's jump right into it. All right, so first thing we see here is T-Bird breaking Bobby's balls, blah, blah, blah. He's talking some smack, right? Very common. All of a sudden, Bobby flips out of nowhere, and boom, big freaking sucker punch, drops Tony on the floor. Bobby gets up, kind of backs away, and you'll notice that posturing that he's doing. It's kind of like ready to go, but like arms out, legs spread wide apart, just very, very like ready to go. Very primitive style, and that is an extremely valuable insight to have when it comes to street fighting. Typically, what we're going to see is this behavior either immediately before a fight or immediately after somebody has been knocked down. Typically, you're going to see this when a guy knocks another guy down. He's got this exact posture going on. So this is something really to look for, especially precursor to a fight. If a guy's standing like that, you really want to be on your guard. Number one, it means confidence. Number two, it means experience, generally speaking. And number three, it means that he is fucking ready to go. So now what we're going to see is something extremely common again. The other guy gets back up and freaking rushes into the other guy. Now, a lot of the times with MMA trained type guys, like if this was somebody who trained in MMA, potentially, and this is not doctrine because obviously circumstances dictate, but he would have knocked him down and immediately taken side control or mount or something like that and proceeded to like a ground and pound type of deal. But a lot of the times, guys who are not MMA type fighters or ground guys or whatever, they'll typically back away and kind of wait for the return fire of the other guy. This is really common. It's not common where you get someone so highly skilled and trained that they bomb, they fire that, the guy goes down, boom, he's immediately in side control or mount or whatever, and, attempting a sub or whatever. It's generally more common that one guy's going to knock another guy down, kind of stand back almost like in shock, like, oh, shit, can't believe I just did that. And then the other guy's going to get back up and they're going to rush and lock up like two freaking billy goats. They're just going to lock up. Now, if we can see here, they lock up, and I believe it's Bobby. He immediately kind of throws like a tie clench onto Tony. And this is actually something that I've noticed a lot of street guys do. It's not because they've necessarily trained in Muay Thai, but it's a remarkably efficient way of controlling somebody. If you get head or neck, back of the head control, it's a remarkably effective way of controlling your opponent. You can reverse him. You can control him, pull his head down, throw knees in him, and whatever. I've known plenty of guys out there who have not really trained in Muay Thai at all, or period at all, but they do this. Street guys love to get head control, pull the head down, and control their opponent like that. It's an extremely common way of doing things. But notice here, immediately they lock up. They go to clenching range. Now, obviously, we talk about this a lot. There's striking range, kicking range, striking range, clenching range, trapping range, and then grappling range. They are different in my book. Some guys break it down a little bit differently. Some guys say there's basically just striking range, clenching or trapping range, depending on what school of martial arts you come from, and then grappling range. Grappling range being the most close-in stuff, chin jabs, finger gouges into the eye, biting, that type of thing. Trapping or clenching being more like this, where it's kind of like, typically, I don't know if you've ever gone through, like, done some stand-up grappling or whatever in jiu-jitsu, but a lot of the times what you're going to see there is two guys kind of are at arm's length away, and they inevitably get closer and closer, but both guys want to keep each other at bay, and it becomes like a big match like this. So that's kind of what we're seeing here, and then inevitably they're two big guys. One closes it up and pushes the other guy against the wall. Again, a highly, highly freaking common thing. You're going to see this all the time, especially if there is a wall. Even if there's not, one guy's just going to try to muscle and push the other guy until he can bring him down to the ground, or in this case, push him against the wall. Maybe he is situationally aware enough that he sees there's either a window or a mirror that he can use to his advantage with the glass, and he'll try to push him into that, just in a violent, pure rage. So that's what we're seeing here. He's kind of taking advantage of his surroundings, and in this case, more than likely, it's just kind of an unconscious thing that he's doing. They're not meaning to break the window, obviously, but Tony Soprano is kind of just such a street brawler. He's like, hey, listen, baller and brawler. He's like, listen, fuck this guy, push him into the window, let's get some glass going here, and let's fuck this guy up. So, again, utilizing your environment, highly effective thing, especially when you're dealing with a knife or a bladed weapon. If you can get control of that, push his hand into the wall, push his head into the wall, dry wall. That's a common thing you're going to see when guys are going at it. You push someone to a dry wall, that type of thing. And once you get them against the wall, you can start, like we're seeing here, deploying some strikes. Now, he's got him against the wall. Let's watch what he does next. It immediately goes into that grappling range that we were talking about. Tony starts kind of grabbing and grasping at his head, maybe trying to put a thumb in the eye, maybe just trying to control the head, and maybe even slam that head against the wall, thusly causing kind of a concussive effect, to be scientific about it as much as I hate to be. So that's what we're seeing here. Again, look at what he's doing here. Classic freaking chin jab type of deal. He's getting that head, he's working the chin, and he's pushing it back. This is something that you're actually going to see a lot in Sopranos fight scenes, but it's a very common thing. It's not the type of thing where it's like the classic Fairburn method where you go up and in like a strike. You're actually more so just grabbing the chin and pushing it back. It's trying to make distance, make space. It's a very primitive mindset type of thing, like, let me push his chin away and get him away from me. Let me get space from that thing that is hurting me and push it away from me. It's the reptilian brain, classic fight or flight, adrenaline-driven state where you want to take what's hurting you and push it away from you. But in this case, he's kind of learned to harness it, and he's learned that this chin push thing, the chin jab, so to speak, is a very effective thing. You're going to always see this when you see Tony Soprano close in fighting. He likes to push people's chins, and I like to do it as well. It's a very effective way of controlling your opponent. Once you get that chin and get the mandible, it really kind of is a very just primitive, aggressive way of dealing with your opponent. And if you can utilize that combined with knocking the head against the wall and using it to go ahead and push back, especially if you can make enough space for your hand to go ahead and deploy that into a strike. As we know from World War II combatives, it's an extremely freaking effective way of doing things. So that's what he's doing here. It's gotten into the close-in fighting, the very typical, the very standard, I hate to say it like that, but the very standard way that we see two freaking guys just trying to kill each other is they're gonna freaking grasp at each other's eyes and nose and freaking orifices and freaking push the chin and just very primitively try to destroy and kill and overpower the other individual. So now you're gonna notice that briefly Bobby was trying to like kind of flail around and freak out and maybe get like an over the freaking shoulder haymaker type deal. Again, very common type thing, even with trained guys, but more so with semi-untrained guys. You're going to see, one guy's got the other guy pinned up against the wall or kind of locked in, very close range, and the other guy flips out and he kind of starts doing this and just trying to freaking throw bombs over the top of the other guy's arm or whatever, anywhere he can kind of try to get that opening and just find contact for his fist. It doesn't have to be like the guy's probably got his eyes closed or like just very tunnel vision, doesn't even really know what's going on, almost out of body, and he's just trying to freaking use his caveman fist and make contact with whatever the fuck he can at the moment. Very common type of deal, very much an adrenaline-driven state. You're going to find that if you ever have to get into a street fight, it's going to be such a adrenaline-driven thing that you're not thinking at all. You're simply relying on instincts. This is why it's important to train your instincts the right way so that you're not going ahead and doing these caveman things and flailing about. Instead, maybe you go ahead and throw an elbow, a sharp elbow, or maybe, you push that head back and throw a headbutt or something. But you can see there that didn't work, and Tony's doing a really good job at managing the distance and managing that space, not giving Bobby any space for those freaking caveman strikes to hurt him or hit him. Notice he does there, he kind of comes in a little more and almost like goes for his throat and just goes into what is trying to hurt him. Tony intuitively knows that if he closes that space and distance, he will go ahead and neutralize those freaking bomb effects. He'll neutralize the effect for Bobby to hurt him with his caveman fist there. So there, right there, Bobby does like a really nice reversal. And this is, again, I like it because it really shows a very standard kind of way that especially these old school gangsters are trained to fight. And I said they don't get much training, but look, this is a boxing thing. You see it in MMA, you see it in Muay Thai, but it's very much kind of an old school boxing thing at this point that he's doing, the reversal. He knows that, look, I'm in the corner, I can't stay here, let me hug it up and get him in like a Muay Thai clinch. And I say a Muay Thai clinch, but again, you'll see this in boxing a lot too. He throws his hands over his fist, over the back of the neck. And again, there he did kind of an interlaced finger to finger thing, interlaced hands, and kind of throws him and reverses it. Now, this is kind of like what we think of as like a Muay Thai thing, although it's more of a old school boxing technique, but it's technique, whatever. You can argue what style it's from. I don't care. It works, apparently. So this is what he's doing here. He kind of gets his wits about him enough for a split second to say, fuck this. He hugs it up. He gets that grip, and he, boom, reverses Tony. Now Tony's up against the wall. Let's see what happens from here. Really quick, what you're going to see here is he reverses him, and he immediately kind of, whether it was Tony that kind of stepped back, he made some space, boom, he throws that straight right. Now, this is freaking bread and butter, very common. This is extremely common in boxing. This is just very, very, like, standard bread and butter type stuff with the boxing, with the striking. You go ahead, you get that grip, you reverse it, you come back, boom, you throw that. It's more natural than anything else, guys. Like, really, really is. For anyone who's had experience like street fighting or experience just fighting, to go ahead and once you kind of come here and do the reversal, to just boom, throw that straight right is just so freaking natural. And I'm glad that they put it in there. It was really a good way of showing what these true Jersey freaking old school guys will do. I mean, this is just such a freaking good example of how street fights really go. All right, so this is interesting here. Now, Bobby went ahead and threw that straight right. It, fucked up Tony basically, and they kind of separated for a second. They kind of both hesitated, but more so, Tony took that second. Whoa, he composed himself, and then they both kind of like are standing off for a split second and hesitating. Now notice what he's doing here. Tony kind of fakes him out a little bit. This is, again, just such a common thing. He almost like fakes a groin kick or a kick, and Bobby realizes that and kind of like flinches, and Tony throws a strike into his face. Again, such a common thing. And in Muay Thai it happens a lot, and you train this way where you fake the kick and throw it high, or you fake high and you kick low. Just a very common thing. And I mean, whether or not you'd see this in the street depends kind of on how much experience the other person or the people, the freaking guys have had. But again, kind of a common thing where, especially if somebody's experienced, they'll fake low and go high, or fake high and go low. Now what we're seeing is pretty interesting, and I can't tell if that was a jab or if that was kind of a overhand right, but it doesn't really matter. Tony gets him and then immediately pushes him back into the wall. Very, very natural human reaction. Boom, I get him. What do I do? And I'm going to go into him and angrily, just in an adrenaline-driven, pure rage state, fucking just go into him. And notice there, he's putting his hands around his neck. This, again, very, very, very common, especially in just raged out street fight, just combat, to go ahead and try to push your thumbs into the other person's windpipe and choke them like that. It's so common that we see it over and over and over and over and over again. It's just very natural, primitive human reaction. I want to kill him. I want to end him. Let me cut off his air supply and just do it that way, like caveman primitive. But again, this is what we're dealing with on the street. This is exactly the type of thing that we have to be looking out for, guys. We have to be training for, is somebody who is so enraged and raged out and just so full of freaking adrenaline that they're going to push you against the wall or push you against the floor and try to just kill you and squeeze off your air supply and put their thumbs into your neck and just push and kill like that. We have to be training for that, not only training for that and instilling in ourselves the right reactions, but also under that type of stress, under that type of power. We have to be going as much force on force as we can in order to, number one, understand what it's going to feel like when our adrenaline is flowing. And I realize I keep saying the word adrenaline, but that's just exactly what this is. We have to realize how it's going to feel when that's being applied to us, and so we can take the time during training and train the proper responses into it, or actually program it into ourselves, I should say. So if you'll notice there, hair pulling, again, just a very natural human reaction, very scientific thing. He's getting his air supply cut off. He's panicking. He doesn't know what to do. Let me grab the hair and try to pull what's hurting me away from me. I want to either push or pull. Again, with the reptilian mindset here, when it goes into the fight or flight mode, and you're choosing fight, or unfortunately, fight is the choice that's been bestowed upon him at the moment, he's going to rely on the most natural human reactions, pushing and pulling. In this case, pushing's not exactly working. He doesn't know what to do. He's flipped out. Let me try to grab a hold of something, in this case hair, and try to pull it away from me. I want this choking thing away from me. Let me try to pull him away from me. Pushing and pulling. So that's what's going on there. Is a very close in, just savage deathmatch combat at this moment. And if you notice, what's going to come up here is a classic boom, knee to the groin. Very typical, very common. Not much else to say about it. You know, classic Fairburn, classic gutter fighting, classic street stuff. Just you know, all around classic. Good one on Tony, I guess. So if you'll notice here, the women are back there. Oh my gosh. And the wife, Carmela Soprano, tries to rush in and get involved, and unfortunately she is in vain and she gets pushed into the table. Now, I just want to bring this up real quick because it is a very valid point. Typically when something like this happens, especially more of a domestic type thing or whatever, you're going to have to expect that other people are going to try to get involved. You have to be ready for that. Typically you'll see either, you know, one guy's friends try to rush in, or somebody tries to come in and pull them apart or something, and very typically you'll see that, you know, that person either gets knocked to the ground or slammed up against the wall or something. But I don't see a lot of guys really training for this out there, and that's kind of a shame because it usually ends up happening unless it's just kind of a one-on-one thing and that's it. But if there's other people around, typically someone will try to come in, someone or some different or some people will try to come in and break it up or stop the fight or assist the person losing in some manner. So be ready for that. In this case, it was just the type of thing where she gets pushed, even just by mistake or by complete accident. She goes and, you know, bumps up against the table and probably gets a bruise or whatever. But, you know, in the end, I think she kind of thought like, oh, you know, I shouldn't have done that. But hey, it's just an instinct, especially with women. It's like a natural motherly instinct almost to try to like rush in and help. But typically people who do that, I mean, look, it's hard even for someone who's trained to try to freaking split up two freaking big, huge grown men like this fighting. Hey, good freaking luck, you know? It's rough. You're going to get hit. You're going to get smashed on the ground. Something's probably going to happen. So it's rough to split up two guys, but I wanted to throw that in there just to make you guys aware that you should be expecting at some point somebody to try to come in and give mutual assistance. Civilians will try to come in, or if it's more of a military application, you know, the guy's buddy will come in and try to freaking assist. So if you can, like, have your situational awareness that, you know, there's other people around or potentially could be coming around. Well, I had alluded to this earlier about the headbutt, and I didn't even notice until I'm rewatching this, but notice here, Bobby freaking clenches him up, and boom, headbutt, and Tony gets all fucked up, and he's like, whoa. Very, very good on Bobby. Just very good reaction. Typically, again, very street. This is something that's kind of a learned thing, but once you learn it and deploy it once, you're going to kind of want to do it over and over and over again because it is very highly effective. To go ahead and just boom, grab the head, boom, grab the headbutt, and watch the mother freaking freak out after that. It's a good tactic here. So as I keep saying, I really like this. You'll notice he does the headbutt, and then he immediately goes in, starts throwing uppercuts into those into that rib cage. Very classic Jersey, New York, freaking old school, like Italian, you know, Irish even, just street boxing. This is exactly what this is freaking like old school street boxing, just dirty freaking fighting. I mean, this is a classic example, and obviously this is a choreographed thing that we're looking at here. So whoever freaking put this together was very smart in the way that they in fact put it together, because they have that old school street boxing manner of things going on here. So he clenched it up, he threw the headbutt, boom, and then immediately kind of like boom into the rib cages. Just, I mean, this is what we're looking at here. These two guys, they grew up in Bloomfield, Belleville, Newark area. They were raised in that, you know, Jersey Italian culture where it's all about freaking, you know, kind of like settling your problems on the street. And I'm sure they boxed a bit in the ring. I mean, that's a big thing, especially like in New York and Jersey, especially in these neighborhoods. You know, you bring your son or your nephew or whatever into the ring. You show them some things. Hey, this is how you throw some uppercuts. Even show them some dirty tricks. You know, look, this is illegal in the boxing ring, but in the street, grab them and throw the headbutt and then throw the uppercuts. Just a very, very typical thing in this environment. To go ahead and kind of learn how to fight in the boxing ring and learn also some dirty skills with that, and then apply what you know on the streets and learn more, you know, on the streets as you go. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, is kind of a really good mix of like just animalistic, savage, you know, experience mixed with some very solid kind of like boxing or street boxing skills, such as the reversal, you know, the headbutt, the uppercuts into the ribs. And if you notice kind of the tight way he was doing that, now obviously again this is a choreographed thing, but this is exactly what you'll see, especially in this type of circle that these guys are running in. Somebody who's trained in some boxing and put some other dirty tricks to it, you know, dirty boxing or whatever. And I really like it for that, exactly that reason, because, you know, obviously I grew up in, you know, not this exact environment here, but around it. directly around it. So I know this type of fighting, I know these type of guys, and this is exactly what they're going to be doing is, like I said, the tight uppercuts, and, the reversal and that type of thing. So let's look what happens after he goes ahead, reverses him, and throws some uppercuts. All right, so obviously Bobby, he had Tony on the ropes, so to speak. He knew it. He then goes ahead and pushes him away. Again, to bring it back, a very boxing thing to do. You've reversed it. You've thrown some uppercuts. Maybe you push the guy away and immediately, boom, a really nice, just straight overhand right. In this case, not so straight, but that's very typical. It's just a sloppy, boom, freaking bomb to the face. And then after that, Tony falls, and it's kind of all over from there. That's a very common thing as far as the pushing him back. It's more of just like it's either one of two things. It's a learned thing from boxing or fighting in general, or it's kind of an instinct like, oh shit, I want to push it away. Whatever's freaking there that's a threat, let me push it away and get it away from me. And then as soon as he realizes, wait, I pushed it away, what? Boom, to just go ahead and throw that sloppy freaking bomb on the guy is, again, very, very, very common. In this case, there was really nothing Tony could have done. He was all fucked up already. It's not like he really had the wherewithal to either like slip it or duck or freaking stand back or anything. He was just kind of susceptible and open. Unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes. Now, obviously, Tony is like the bad guy or the main boss in this, and he gets beaten in this particular fight. At the end, we're going to see something that's kind of going to top this all off, but I want to say here that this is kind of a very nice example of the fact that nobody's invincible. You saw how hard these guys fought. They both got licks on each other, and in the end, the one guy beat the other guy. It maybe is not the way that it should play out, but typically fights, they're not necessarily the way that it should play out, right? It just happens. Things happen. Obviously, this might have gone on a little bit longer than a typical street fight might have, but if you look at it kind of, and you don't pause it all, and you look at it, it goes very fast. That's typically what we see in these types of things. Sometimes they can stretch on longer, yes and no. Maybe he would have gotten knocked out from the headbutt, maybe earlier, maybe whatever, maybe. But that's a big thing in street combat, is a maybe or what ifs, right? But let's leave all of that aside. This is just a choreographed scene, but this is what it was. And in the end, the one guy got knocked down and he couldn't get back up. That's the best case scenario, honestly, in this type of thing, where you get knocked down and you can't get back up and the other guy leaves you be. A lot of the times what we're seeing, especially more and more these days, is the one guy gets knocked down and the other guy's just a freaking savage, and I'm not saying that in a good way at all, and he comes and maybe stomps the other guy's head in, or freaking grounds and pounds, or even picks up some kind of weapon, whether it's a chair or a club, and just cavemans him. Not good, not honorable in any way. Efficient, yes. That's what we're going to go ahead and see in like combat, in a theater of war or something like that, where you need to end the other guy. But a lot of the times what we see nowadays, especially with gang violence and stuff, is there's no honor. Obviously in this context, he wasn't going to kill the boss of the freaking family and all that, but typically you want to be aware that even if you get knocked down and you can't get back up, it's not going to be over from there. You really need to be prepared to fight and defend yourself from the ground. Even if you are kind of incapacitated, to be able to have the wherewithal to not give up, even if like you're all fucked up on the ground, to still try to be able to fight through that is a good skill to have. And that's where it comes in. And I'm not saying this simply because I'm a blue belt, but I am saying this just from personal experience, literally on the streets, that if you go down to the ground, if you stay down there, be prepared to get really, really, really seriously injured or killed. You need to be able to either get back up or try to fight and fend off from the ground, which is a skill that you can learn to develop along the way through proper training. So these are some things that I wanted to show you guys. Obviously, there's a lot more we could talk about here. As I said, it's a choreographed thing, but I thought it was a perfect way to go ahead and keep kind of illustrating examples of scientific fighting. This is what it's all about, is learning through others' mistakes and learning through visual examples like this to kind of realize what real fights look like. Obviously, whoever put this choreographed scene together had a lot of experience, had a lot of knowledge and wisdom that they used to throw this together. And I think it's a very interesting way to go ahead and learn as martial artists ourselves what actual street confrontations are like, because I know a lot of us do a lot of training, but it doesn't necessarily always prepare us for a life and death savage death match like this, or even worse than this. When it comes down to it, it's such a freaking primitive caveman type of thing that if you're in the dojo just throwing, freaking heel kicks, or simply just rolling in jiu-jitsu, or simply, doing Muay Thai or whatever your art is, if you're simply doing that and not preparing for shit like this, you're doing yourself and whoever you're trying to protect a disservice. So be aware about that. There's way more to it than simply technique. There's also just raw human emotion that goes into it. So be aware about that, guys. This is exactly the type of situation that, more than likely you're going to find yourself in if you get into confrontations in the street. Before I close it out, I want to close it out with this.
What the fuck are you doing?
You beat me fair and square.
Come on, let's just...
Now, I showed this scene just at the end, not only to end it on a happy note, but also to kind of show the mentality that they're dealing with here. And this is kind of a mentality that you almost have to have sometimes, is that the boss of the family, whatever, he was beaten, but he had more respect in the end for it. He said, you know what, you won fair and square. And that is sometimes the way that it goes, in the street, is that it's more of the matter that you fight rather than like if you won or lost. This is kind of just a street mentality. So I've been in situations myself a few times now where I have not backed down from a confrontation. In fact, I have been the one to slightly escalate things. Just the way that you look at another individual, the blank stare or whatever comes on your face that you're ready to fight at that moment. All the guy has to do is flinch and you're ready to go, and you're going to go and take his head off. That mentality will save you from getting in a street fight. So I say that simply, I show that rather simply to kind of illustrate this point, is that a lot of the times it's the fact that you're prepared to fight the individual in the first place that may go ahead and defuse the situation. Not always. Don't take that as doctrine, because it could get you into a lot of trouble, so don't quote me on that. But just that simple fact that you are willing to fight in the first place goes ahead and gives a lot of respect from the other individual to you. And a lot of the times, he doesn't necessarily even want to fight. I was in a situation fairly recently where a guy and I were having kind of a dispute over some parking or whatever, and I just wasn't backing down. I was kind of grumpy that day anyway, so it was very apparent that I had stopped talking, and I was just ready to fucking fight. And the guy looked at me and he kind of said, listen, like verbatim, he said, listen, I respect you, like, let's go on our way. And I took a second and I looked, I said, yeah, fine, fuck it, like, let's go. All right, man. And that's something like that has happened a few times actually recently, where I'm just so zoned out, ready to fight, and the other guy sees it and he's like, fuck this, like, let's not even bother, because we both know that we're probably both going to get seriously hurt, or at least one of us. And I've been in situations like that too, where I'm kind of running my mouth like an idiot, and the other guy just either shuts up and stops talking, or it's just so apparent that he's a brawler as well. And I'm like, you know what, fuck this. And either, I go on my way or whatever. That's a typical thing, but don't count on that. It definitely doesn't always happen like that. It can also go very bad and he pulls out a knife or he starts beating you and then stomping in your head, or his buddies come up or whatever. Anything could fucking happen on the streets. So be aware of that, but I did want to show that just to illustrate the point of respect amongst people like this, that it is a big thing. So I wanted to show that. Guys, until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense. Train hard and train smart, guys, and stay hard. I will see you on the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. If you guys like this and this type of analysis here where I broke it down from like a choreographed fight scene, let me know in the comments below. As I said before in the last video, you guys can vote with your freaking thumbs up and your freaking, not only your thumbs up, but also your freaking comments and all that. And the amount of views that a video gets. I have no way of knowing before I deploy these how many views it'll get. But if it gets a lot, or if it gets a lot of thumbs, or if it gets, you know, positive comments, I'll make more of this type of thing. And I'm trying to figure that out now as to what exactly you guys want to see and how you want to see it. So let me know down there. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. And thank you for being warrior-minded. I will see you in the next video. Cheers, motherflower.